I guess the one thing you can say definitively is that Donald Trump has now introduced into the global economy, to America, a radical uncertainty about what on earth is going to happen tomorrow, let alone for the next 4 years. And there is a big economic cost to that.
Well, we know we've seen him for 9 years, 10 years nearly now, since he declared his presidency, his candidacy, and he's unpredictable. And the other thing we know about him is that he's obsessed with tariffs. And, given what happened to me when I was in government, I was very struck by the fact that it was the bond market, actually, not the shares, that I think tipped him over the edge, because the worry was that interest rates were going to go up for normal Americans. And I think people got him into a room and said, you can't do this. And essentially, I think he's climbed down. But of course...
And interestingly, Kwasi, I think from reading the runes here, he has his trade advisors who are saying, go for it. He has Elon Musk saying he's worried. But actually, it seems as though the person who got him in the room was the equivalent of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who said, this is going to have catastrophic implications, as you said, not just for rising interest rates and recession, but also a big distrust in being able to save safely in America. It was actually the Treasury Secretary stopped him, and you sort of slightly wonder whether you aren't thinking maybe that should have been made.
Well, no, I'm not sure it was Scott himself, because Scott...
Well, he was down at Mar-a-Lago.
He was. He looked like a hostage last week when he was announcing that. I mean, I thought it was like, reminded me of, Middle Eastern videos, actually. I mean, the way he had to sort of rehearse those lines, which he clearly didn't believe. I met Scott a few times, and he's a kind of moderate Republican.
He's the equivalent of the Chancellor of the Exchequer in America.
He is. And I think the people around him definitely said to the president, you can't do this. But at that moment, you don't know what he's going to do as Scott Bessent. I mean, he could have fired him on the spot. He's done crazier things than that. Or he could have rode back. And I think that what happened was that his political nous kicked in. I think the fact that interest rates were going to be higher for his base was really the main driver of this.
I mean, I just wonder, watching all this, markets crashing, the bond markets, which is when governments can borrow or not, raising questions. I mean, are you getting PTSD from some of this?
Well,
it's mainly trust, isn't it?
There were moments where I thought, OK, I remember this. But what you said was very interesting, because, obviously an economy like Britain is so much smaller than the US, and you can see, what we were trying to do, or what Liz and I were trying to do, the markets reacting, and that having that effect. But it's very surprising in the US, given how big it is, given the privileged position of their currency, the dollar, that happened to an economy as big as that.
This is being called... I was going to say, it's been called Trump's Liz Truss moment, isn't it? Because of the consequences, which, of course, people will know that you were heavily involved in...
I was absolutely involved in.
At the same time. And there's no doubt, it kind of has had a massive impact, hasn't it? A detrimental impact.
So I think he's in a better position than Liz Truss, because, of course, it's a presidential system. There's no way that anyone can remove him other than through death or resignation or impeachment. But these are very rare things. Whereas in a parliamentary system, you're much more vulnerable, because you've got to carry your colleagues, you've got to carry the MPs.
Which does explain this point about the bond market and why this is so unusual. Because bond markets are the way in which governments raise money from savers all around the world, to finance their spending, to finance their budget deficits, if they've got one, like America has. And normally, people think of saving by buying American bonds issued by the government as being the safest thing. And if you have, like the problems you had in Britain, or a global recession, or a pandemic, normally what happens is people think, I'm going to go to the safest place, so I will go and buy Treasury bonds, because at least that will be reliable. And normally that means that they were like a safe haven.
That's right.
And what happened in the last 24 hours, really, for the first time for a very long time, is at a moment of crisis, people thought, actually, America isn't safe. And therefore, what they were doing was they were selling American Treasury bonds. That's why the interest rates pressures were going up. And that hasn't really happened in this way before. That is why it's such a radically new thing and a frightening thing for Americans.
The bit that I remembered from my experience at the end of whenever it was 2.5 years ago was that, much like what we were trying to do, he did everything at once. And that's what I think spooked the market. He tried to do he was slapping tariffs across the whole world at the same time. And I don't think the market expected that. No. And if you do things that they don't expect, then that's how they
don't
react.
like uncertainty, do they? I mean, what about then, Jonathan? What happens now? Because he was sort of made it clear this is the medicine that needs to be taken to get to where we want to. But, you know, he's going to want to save face over this, isn't he? We're in a kind of limbo position at the moment. Well, what's going to happen next?
The problem is it's such a roller coaster, and we can almost talk about this as if it's a sort of economic soap opera, but it's all going to have real impacts on the lives of the viewers. So if you've been saving in a private pension or works pension and you were hoping to retire this year, you've potentially had the value of your pension has gone down because of this market turmoil. Let's hope the market stabilises and those pension funds improve. But that's just a very good example of how something that's going on in the White House is going to impact people here in this country.
It's a good point to make. And actually, we will be speaking to someone in the next hour who will be talking through precisely that, the impact on mortgages, on pensions, on savings, and just what it will mean for people.
So the main question, though...
I mean, do you think Donald Trump, I mean, at the moment, his language, does he really quite capture the, people's worries? I just wonder what Americans
I think he'll want to... This is what I wanted to say. I think the big question is whether he comes back.
So I understand that this is golf terminology, by the way.
For anyone, yes, do you know?
For anyone who doesn't understand
what does it mean?
Well, yeah, because apparently if you get the yips when you are just about to play a golf swing, then it's kind of when the anxiety, when that psychological pressure gets to you and you mess up because of that.
It's like putting, when you're putting.
So if the public are getting yippy, that means they are failing
jittery
at the key moment.
But it was very odd. I mean, I don't know who those guys behind him were. It looked like a scene from a film, a mob film or something. I mean, it was very odd optics. And I think what he doesn't want to do is back down publicly. He's got to say...
He's got to find some way of coming out of this.
But I mean, we're talking about he's backed down, but there's still tariffs. I mean, we're still in a trade war with China, which is going to hit the global economy.
Yeah, and let's not forget...
We want to send our cars that we make.
We've still got the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium, as well as the 25% on car parts. So, it's still going to have a significant effect.
This is going to really impact our economy, and our economy is going to slow down. It's going to impact jobs here. It's potentially going to push up prices across the world. We've just been through an inflation crisis where everyone's been paying more. We're going to potentially have that again. I think Keir Starmer, by the way, is doing the right thing by responding calmly and trying to get a deal behind the scenes and trying to negotiate behind the scenes. There's no point us retaliating because that's not really going to have any impact on the US anyway. But this is going to be really choppy times. And I just got to tell you, by the way, from my point of view, this is exactly why you need a stable government and not somebody like Nigel Farage who'd follow exactly the same policies as Donald Trump.
You don't need to go.
Yeah,
no one was talking about Nigel Farage.
I've got to get that digging. I've got to get that digging into Nigel Farage.
I think for Trump, the question will be how he gets back. Because I suspect that somebody would have given him an option at the beginning of this to do it, try and salami slice it. And he said, no, we're going to do it all at once. Now he's retreated. It'd be very interesting to see if he comes back.
But he's not retreating from what is a massive trade war with China now.
No.
And he's trying to say, the Chinese, Xi's a strong guy, he'll want to make a deal.
A deal.
But they are, I mean, the tariffs on China now, both directions, are huge. And, by the way, the huge danger is for the world that China exports, which can't go to America,
dumped.
Now start to come to the rest of Europe. They'll be cheaper.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're in a big China-European trade tension. So this has got a lot of...
So I think Jonathan's right. I think the mere fact of the China-US trade war, which is essentially where we're in, has got massive negative impact, potentially.
Massive.
That in itself.
Yep.
Forget about all the other tariffs on the other countries. That in itself, I think, is...
Trump does say that a deal is there to be done. Just read my book.
Interesting stance.
Xi, read my book. Find out how to make a deal, and then I'll chat with you. In his mind, President Xi of China, please, Sir Donald, may I make a deal? That is still that is his mindset.
I mean, it's absolutely bananas, isn't it? I mean, are we really going to have 4 years of this bonkersness as well? I mean, it's just...
he's an entertainer, okay? So he was doing that.
He's a reality TV star.
Yeah, but that's what he was around the world.
I agree.
So, I mean, although we can kind of sit and say, oh, my goodness, it's absolutely extraordinary, and you sort of watch it, but actually it is having an impact, isn't it, for people around the world?
So I suppose his supporters, and I'm not a protectionist, but what he's trying to do is to try and bring back manufacturing jobs to the US. We've got to always have in mind these aren't the actions of a madman. There is method in the madness. and you've got to try and understand. We have to try and understand
Yes,
what he's doing.
but forgetting the bit that, you know, all the parts that go into the things that are made in America often come from other countries.
That's true,
don't they?
but the fact is, America has lost millions of manufacturing jobs over the last few decades. China came into the World Trade Organization and has openly manipulated the rules and not played by the rules. And he's saying, this has got to stop. We've got to redress the trade balance. Now, it's not crazy to try and address that. Where I think he went wrong was the way in which he did it. And actually, at the beginning of this, I did have memories of the Liz Truss, my episode, because he was trying to do everything at once. And that was
when
where
we
I
came
just
into the
thought,
office this morning, you were lying on the floor.
with the towel on my head.
Bringing back memories. Is it triggering?
A lot of the style and what happened and how he unrolled the policy did remind me of that time.
America has lower tariffs. The Chinese have always had trade barriers. The same thing is true of India. I think it's quite hard for Americans to export their cars to Germany, to export their agricultural products to the European Union, including Britain. However, if you go after this kind of massive trade war, the thing you will not end up with more jobs, good jobs in America. It will end up with American consumers paying higher prices and the rest of the world, as well as America, being worse off. That's what happened.
Well, look,
and actually, it probably won't lead to lots of new jobs in manufacturing. It'll probably lead to lots of automated jobs, robots.
Yeah, but there's AI. So look, so I think you're right that he might not get what he wants, but we've got to try and understand what he's doing. And also this EU point. I mean, the EU is protectionist. You know that. You know that. I know that. But we don't talk about it. He's doing basically what the EU does to the US. You know, he's saying, you know, you've got barriers for trade. No, not at the same rate, but the principle is exactly the same. I mean, you know, we talked about the common market, we talked about the common agricultural policy. Those are protectionist policies.
Okay.
We've got to be honest about that.
We'll just take a pause there because we're also joined this morning by the co-leader of the Green Party, Adrian Ramsey. Good morning to you. We're going to be talking to you ahead of the local elections on the 1st of May. Of course, the Green Party are launching their campaign this week, hoping to pick up more council seats after the best ever performance in the general election. Obviously, we're just in the middle of talking about President Trump's, the pause in the higher tariffs at the moment. What would your stance be? How do you think that we should be dealing with this situation?
Well, President Trump is throwing his weight around, isn't he? And we need to stand up to him, and we do that by working with other countries where we have the most close alignment, our most natural trading allies, particularly in the European Union being the closest trading partners, but also other countries that have closer economic policies, closer values to us, like Canada, for example. So we need to club together. We need to not rush into a response, but make sure there is a collective one. But we also need to learn the lessons from the situation, in that what we're seeing with President Trump's actions now, as we saw with the war in Ukraine, is we've got a volatile international situation that can affect our economy, and we need to take action to make our economy more resilient, support our manufacturers, our farmers to produce more in the UK so our economy is more resilient, both to changes in the international political climate, but also to climate breakdown coming down the tracks. If we produce more locally, it's good for jobs, good for manufacturing, and makes our economy more resilient.
Of course, people are voting in a few weeks' time in the local elections, and they'll be asking themselves, should they vote Green? And they'll be asking about, will the potholes be filled in? Will the services be reliable? Will the bins be collected? They'll be looking at the pictures of Birmingham, where there are bin strikes going on. What do the Greens offer to people in these local elections? And what is your promise? I saw in Bristol, where it's a Green-run council, that you said to citizens there they would only have their bins collected once every 4 weeks. Is that Green Party policy?
No, it's not. And indeed, Bristol Council's now confirmed that that won't be going ahead. They won't be doing that. But what they will be doing is increasing the frequency of recycling collections. Well, what they decided to do was to consult residents over a range of options, which of which that was one option, but there were others as well, and they genuinely wanted to listen to people's feedback, as they have now done, and putting in place plans to increase the amount of recycling that's happening, as we're seeing happening on councils around the country. That's what I think residents want. But to answer your wider question about what Green councillors offer, we have a growing number of Green councillors around all corners of England and Wales. In fact, we're the only party to have increased our number of councillors every single year in a row for the last 7 years. And that's because people see that we're hard-working, effective representatives and offering something different. And what that's about is, of course, defending the local environment, which really matters to people. But it's also about working to protect local services, to address inequality. So there's lots of examples of councils around the country where we are pressing for and introducing more affordable housing, which is a real challenge for people in so many areas. So in Mid-Suffolk, in my area, for example, we've built hundreds of new affordable homes, which are meaning hundreds of people who would have otherwise gone homeless have got somewhere good to live.
Yeah, when we're looking at sort of, the situation at the moment, what people are telling you on the streets that are important to them, one key thing, isn't it, is the money that they've got in their pocket and how the financial crisis has affected them, the things they can and can't afford. When we look at this debate about, green policies and the cost of them, we are seeing the government now pushing back on some of them because accepting the fact that actually, as a country, we can't afford it at the moment. We have to pay for the NHS. We need extra money for defence. Do you think that that is justified, that although we still have the goal, there are some policies that we have to look at and think we just can't afford it at the moment when we look at the financial situation people are facing?
Well, we absolutely need to tackle the cost of living crisis, and one of the root causes of that is high energy prices. And if you look at what Green councillors are doing, where I was for our local election launch in Warwick, the district council, led by the Greens, have spent £5 million on making council homes there warmer and more efficient to run, cheaper to run by making them greener. And that's the sort of policy we need government to invest in nationally. But it's a wider picture too, because if we take the opportunity I was talking about earlier of investing in our manufacturing, in supporting our farmers to produce more food locally, the sort of things we need to do to move to a green economy will create jobs, they'll bring bills down, they'll make it easier for people to get around with low quality public transport, they'll invest in renewable energy, which is the cheapest way to produce electricity. Actually, the green industrial revolution is not only good for jobs and for the environment, it's good for tackling bills as well.
So in the local elections, simple slogan, vote green, get
hard-working local representatives and people who'll stand up to defend our local environment and restore our public services. And not only that, at a national level, we're the ones saying we should be willing to ask the very richest in society, the multimillionaires, the billionaires, to pay a little bit more in tax so that we can restore our NHS, which even under a Labour government is seeing frontline services that are already overstretched further cut. And that has absolutely got to be reversed.
And you will get your bins collected even if you live in Bristol.
Absolutely. It's Birmingham where people are not getting their bins collected, and that's run by Labour, I believe. People will definitely get their bins collected where there are Green councillors, and they will get more recycling, which is, I think, what people want. OK,
Adrian Ramsey there, co-leader of the Green Party. Thank you for joining us this morning. And to say local elections are taking place across many places in England on the 1st of May. We will be speaking to the leaders of all the major parties ahead of polling.
Interesting. If you are Labour looking to the next election, or the Conservatives, I mean, which of the main parties is most worried about the Greens?
Well, I mean, the Greens are a protest party, and look, I'm sure they'll pick up councillors in this set of local elections. But the Greens aren't going to form a government at the next general election.
They could damage your vote. I mean, it was very interesting what he said about taxing richer people more, because I know a lot of people in the Labour Party would agree with that. Yeah,
but we know what happens then, don't we? That they leave. We've just seen the figures recently, haven't we, about the number of
my view.
Wealthier people that are leaving as a consequence.
That's my view, but that's what the political debate is about. And it's interesting that he took a position there, which is very much to the left.
There's no doubt
the government.
The Greens squeezed Labour's vote in a lot of seats in 2024.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would, the Green vote went up in my old patch. I'd probably still be a Labour MP had the Green vote not gone up. It only went up by a couple of thousand, but that was enough to finish me off. But
so actually, the answer to my question is vote Green, what do you get?
You get rid of John Ashworth.
Well, I mean, a rallying cry, which one?
They're going to do really well now.
That's right.
Listen, should we look at other matters that are in the news today? We're talking about the neighbourhood policing guarantee. This is to put 13,000 more officers into neighbourhood policing roles by 2029. There'll be local named officers. They're going to be out and about at peak times to make sure that there's sort of a more visible presence. I mean, people are going to be... I think this is what people have wanted, isn't it? To see more police around. But is it enough? Is it going to work in the way it's intended?
I think this is a really, really great policy. We're going to have more police officers in communities. I think one of the big mistakes that was made under the... I think it was when Theresa May was Home Secretary. She got rid of these community policing hubs, which the last Labour government brought in. And I knew from my time in Leicester, which is an inner city seat, how valuable they were to have named police officers, part of the local community. People, it reassures people, it gives people a sense that they know that the police is there if they need them. We obviously need more officers, and the government are recruiting more officers. I think this is exactly the sort of thing the Labour government should be focusing on.
I mean, I've been following politics 30 years. Every government I can remember has said we're going to put more bobbies on the beat. We tried to do that. The Labour government tried to do that.
The Cameron government actually cut them. They went down.
And we had PCSOs that you mentioned.
This is getting police out of the desks and onto the beat.
But people have been saying that for 30 years. But people have been saying
changing the priorities.
People have been saying that for 30 years. More bobbies on the beat. We've heard that time and time again. And I'm just interested to look at the detail in terms of, are they going to put more money into this? Is the Home Office budget going to be increased? How are they going to fund this, given the pressures on public services?
Does it make a difference, or is it just what the public want to see? Because when you're worried about crime, what you want to see is visible policing.
I honestly think it does make a difference, because I think, some of the stuff that really blights people's lives, the antisocial behaviour, the sort of drug dealing on corners, the graffiti, the gangs, particularly if you're a place where you're in a city like where I was an MP, this stuff makes people's law-abiding citizens, their lives miserable, and the police being in the community, talking to people, being around, is how they reassure people, but it's also how they pick up leads, it's how they pick up what's going on and can chase down often the thugs that need to be chased down.
So I think what John says is right, and particularly as a constituency MP, I was struck by the fact that communities wanted to have a face and a name.
That's right.
In policing, so that you have a personal connection with the bobby on the beat or the local police chief. And that happened, actually. In my constituency, there were local officers who were very, very much embedded in their communities.
Right, so we have to ask you, before we run out of time, we were talking earlier, before you guys arrived, about the King and Queen Camilla.
Yes.
In Italy, and having a fabulous 20th wedding anniversary, as the King said, candlelit dinner.
But there's nothing like marking it publicly, is there, with the whole world on a state visit to Italy?
But Charlotte pointed out to me earlier, which I have to admit I didn't realise until you said it, how interesting this was, that Camilla was wearing the same dress as she wore 20 years ago when they were married. And actually, it's because...
I thought it was really rather lovely. This is the civil ceremony outfit that she wore. You can see it there, cream silk chiffon gown. It is really rather beautiful. She did wear it again, actually, in 2007 for the opening of the National Assembly for Wales. And I thought it was just a lovely touch.
Fact.
Oh, thank you, Ed. I do try. A lovely touch to re-wear it. But then I just thought, how many people do re-wear their outfits? And we've just been speaking to you about this.
I bought a suit for my wedding, and then it became my kind of main suit. So I wore it a lot in government, as an MP.
Did you feel a warm glow every time you put it on?
Special memories.
I didn't associate. I mean, I hate to say it, but it was, it was a really nice suit.
For men and women with the emotional attachment to it.
It didn't bring back any memories. It was just a nice suit.
Jonathan?
No, I mean, I just had a normal suit as well. I wore it, carried on wearing it. It's well gone now, worn out over the years, but... yeah,
I did buy one. I did buy one for the occasion, but then it became my kind of main suit.
Yeah,
I didn't buy one. It was bought for me.
And has it been worn since?
I think I just wore it the once. It was by, I don't want to name the company, but a famous German manufacturer who made quite big boxy suits with big baggy trousers. And at the time, I thought, why am I wearing these pantaloons? And I think by the time I tried years later to put it on again,
many years ago.
Definitely didn't fit. But it was so. Yeah, I wore mine once.
That's a sign of a good marriage.
There we are, you see.
Happy marriage.
I know, I did as I was told, if I'm honest. How long have you had to wait to see your GP? In some areas of the UK, 1 in 10 people are currently waiting longer than a month for an appointment with a doctor. That's according to new research commissioned by the Liberal Democrats. Kent and Medway are the worst in the country. 781,000 people waiting at least a month to see their GP. Most of the demand is from people aged over 70, as NHS data says. This group has an average 5 times more appointments than young people.
So, should we prioritise appointments for Gen Zs, the age group currently working, over retirees and pensioners? We are now joined by 69-year-old Debbie Arnold.
Oh, God,
sorry,
that's
Debbie.
terrible.
59.
Sorry. You won't believe it, though, when I say that figure. So there you are. Does that make feel better?
Thank you.
Ridiculous.
Who's still working and says Gen Z should not be prioritised over AOPs because that would be discriminating, while Austin Okolo, who's 24 years old, says the young and those working contribute to the economy and should be prioritised over OAPs. Good morning to you both. So, Austin, let's start with you in that case. Put your case forward, why you think this is a good idea.
And good luck.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I think it's important to get access to healthcare. I think health's important, so I think both is as important as each other. However, I do believe that Gen Z, they are the backbone of society, they are the future. And I think that as a society, with the state of the economy, we've got to take preventive measures. So I think as a Gen Z, you're more likely to get healthcare and not need it for a while longer. Whereas maybe as a more elderly person, when you get to a certain stage, certain illnesses, they can be repetitive, so it can be a cycle, and that might be why it's so long.
Okay.
As a Gen Z, if you get them in and out, they can get back into work.
Straight back
it's
out
helping
there.
employers.
Debbie, what about that point? Then they're the backbone, they're the future, and it's important with these things to get in early.
So you wait.
I wait?
You wait. Let him get in first.
Of course not. That's absolutely ridiculous. If I had a broken shoulder and you had a terminal illness, then I would expect you to go first. But if it was the other way round, I would expect me to go first. And I've paid my taxes. I'm still paying my taxes. I am called an OAP, but I'm still working. So why should I prioritise you and not me, and not us? This is absolutely ridiculous. We've been working for years, and we're still working. If I was sitting there, doing my knitting and not doing anything else, but even if I was doing my knitting, I've still paid my dues.
It's not about you, though. So, you're
It
paying
is
your
about me. It's about my age
You're
group.
paying your taxes, but, that's you. There's a lot of people in the age bracket to you that aren't working, aren't paying taxes.
But they have paid taxes.
And also, you're also the wealthiest group in the UK, so you can afford to go private. Whereas Gen Z...
hang on a minute. You can't say that
they're
to
struggling
somebody
with housing.
who cannot
They're struggling
pay.
with housing.
Yeah, some
a lot
old
of them are in
people
debt.
cannot
They can't
pay
go to
their
private.
electricity bills, darling.
I know, of
So
course.
you can't say they're wealthy.
And
they're
Gen Z can.
freezing
And
to
Gen Z
death.
can. And Gen Z can.
Well, Gen Z have got a chance to get their lives together. We all
If they
had
get
to
the right
do that when we
healthcare.
were
If
younger.
they get the right healthcare.
We did. We are talking about healthcare and everything. You're saying that older people should, they can go private. They can't afford to go
I don't
private.
think they can, but they've got more of a likelihood of going private. So Gen Z, we've got the housing working against us, we've got the job market working against us, cost of living crisis, pandemic.
But
It feels like the whole world. It feels like the whole world is against us. We've got to have a chance.
Oh, you're young and you've got the whole world. You've got years and years ahead of us, of you, and we've got years ahead of us. We've done this before, and it's about time you guys got up and had some welly about you. You can do it. You don't need to prioritise yourselves. It's discriminatory to older people. It should not be allowed.
That doesn't make sense because discrimination is both ways. So if you're saying you're getting health because you're older, that's also discrimination to younger people because you're saying that you can't get it because they're younger. So
we're not saying they can't get it. We're saying it's about how old you are.
I do believe it should be based on severity. So if, of course, it's terminal illness and broken shoulder, of course, terminal illness. But if we sat here today and we've got one person both terminally ill, if I was older, honestly speaking, me personally and a lot of people, if two people are terminally ill, I would let the younger person go because I'll be honest, I've lived my life, I've served. I think as an older person,
you've served. How old are you?
No. If I was older,
If
I was older, I would want to see the next people come through. If we both,
we're just going to lie down in a coffin.
I want to ask you that question. If you were terminally ill and a 20-year-old was terminally ill, would you let them go before you?
Oh, that's a really strange question.
But if you had to pick one...
But that's different. It's completely different about terminally ill because, of course, you would think, well, that person's got their life. But this is different. This is about a GP appointment. It's not about a terminal illness. It's not about a treatment for a terminal illness. But it's not fair to say that we should let you have the GP appointments and we can't have them. You must remember, we've been around a long time. We've paid for our things before.
And often,
you've still got time. You've also got the internet. You've got loads of different jobs that we never had.
There is a point here as well about what ailments the younger generation go to their doctors about, because, you know, you could say that actually if they did get free rein to go first, then there might not be any doctor's appointments left, because there's evidence younger individuals seek GP care for non-urgent issues like
there you go.
headaches, cuts and acne.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't. If it is a non-severe illness and people that are obviously more likely to, you know, have bigger difficulties, of course not. I think if a cut headache, we've got to be realistic here. I'm not naive and stupid.
But your point is, if it's the same case,
yes, for
the
sure,
same illness, take the young person first.
Yeah, I think, you know, morally, everyone deserves healthcare. But if you're looking from the economy point of view, the people that, as an employer, you pay sick people.
Oh.
Wait, quickly, let me land this one. As an employer, you pay when people are off sick.
Right.
So,
Well,
like,
listen,
the longer that the people are off sick, the more it puts strain on the employers, which are already paying higher in taxes because the
We
government.
are going to have to wrap it up there.
Do we have to? I'm so enjoying it.
I know.
Are you
We
ready
could
for
sit
it?
here all
Can't we just
morning.
keep
I just
going?
want to know how old you are.
I'm 24.
I can't wait till you're my age, mate.
I can't wait as well.
Thank you
Look, by
both very much.
by the time
Should we
he's our
find out?
age,
Yeah.
we'll have moved on
Well, yes, to pastures new.
to past years.
Let's look at, let's
Angel
look at the
past-
poll
I might be sitting
result.
there when I'm your age and, you know, arguing with Gen F, whatever.
Because we asked
Baby
you,
boomers.
should Gen Z get priority over OAPs for GP visits? 89% of you there said no, 11% voted yes, they
But
should.
I wonder whether Austin might have shifted that dial a little bit in the last 10 minutes.
We'll
I
let
think
you
he did
know.
a really good job.
Thank you.
Really
Yeah,
good
you
job.
were very
Thank you
brave.
so much.
Thank you both very much.
I mean, you know, wild.
Now the government has announced it will guarantee police patrols in busy areas at peak times, particularly in town centres and on Friday and Saturday nights. It's part of the government's initiative, the Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee, which they say will ensure every community will have dedicated and specialist local policing teams. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is live in Westminster for us this morning. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Can I start by asking you how many of these will actually be police officers? We've been hearing from Katie Bourne this morning. She's the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner. She says only around 3,000 of these will be police officers, which she says won't touch the sides. Is she right?
Well, we'll set out later today the increase in neighbourhood policing this year, this coming year, as a result of the £200 million that we're putting in. And the majority of the new neighbourhood police this year are going to be police officers, but there will be a mix of police officers and PCSOs, and it's right that there should be so. And this is part of our plan for 13,000 additional neighbourhood police across the country over the course of this Parliament. And it'll mean around a 50% increase, or over a 50% increase across the country in neighbourhood policing, which frankly has been decimated over the last 10 years. We've seen police taken off the beat at the same time as we've seen things like street theft and shop theft and antisocial behaviour in town centres. Those sorts of persistent crimes just really increase when we need the neighbourhood police to tackle it.
OK, so how soon will we be able to see an effect in that case? Because this plan is guaranteeing that these numbers will be enforced by 2029. Obviously, that's a few years away. People are going to want to see results now, bearing in mind the situation on our streets.
That's right, and we'll set out the increases later today. But for example, I can tell you that in Greater Manchester, it will mean 150 additional neighbourhood police in this current financial year, over the next 12 months. That's a significant increase, and we'll see those sorts of increases across the country. But you're right, it will take time to deliver the full 13,000. But the real point here is we want to get back to community policing, back to the Bobby on the beat, back to those neighbourhood teams who really know the community, who can work to prevent crime and also go after the criminals because they get the local intelligence. It's really the foundation of community policing, and the Conservatives turned their backs on neighbourhood policing. We're bringing it back because it's so important.
Well, although there is still real pressure, isn't there, on numbers, senior police chiefs are warning of a £1.3 billion funding gap. They say that this will inevitably lead to cuts. We know that the Met Police Force are going to have to lose, they say, 1,700 officers, PCSOs and staff, and cut services. They have a £260 million hole in their budget for the coming year. This is all inevitably going to have an impact on crime, isn't it?
Well, we're actually increasing police budgets by over £1 billion this year. That's important. Of course, there are tight pressures on lots of forces because there are right across public services. And that's as a result of a lot of the problems that we have inherited. But we're putting that additional investment in. There are some specific problems for the Met as a result that they didn't get some of the increases in funding in the last few years of the previous government that other forces did.
Is there more funding available?
Increasing neighbourhood policing. So the Met is also getting a significant increase in its funding, and the Met is also going to increase neighbourhood policing this year. So whether you live in London or Manchester or towns across the country, you will be seeing the increase in neighbourhood policing teams.
OK, sorry to interrupt. It's just obviously, you know, I understand that you're saying you're putting more money in, but we're still hearing from senior police chiefs, from the Met police chief, that is not enough. They still need extra money. Otherwise, officers and services are going to be cut. And that is going to make people really worried about levels of crime and how it will, in fact, impact them.
And I think people do worry about crime, especially we've seen a more than 50% increase in things like street theft, shop theft. That makes you feel unsafe in your own town centre. And that's why town centre patrols are the real priority for this additional neighbourhood policing. But this is exactly why we are announcing this increase in neighbourhood policing, in police back on the beat. We'll set out more of the details. The Prime Minister will set out more of the details later today of precisely what that will mean. And we'll set that out force by force so people can see. And we're also saying, as part of this neighbourhood policing guarantee, you'll get a named contactable officer for your area so you know who you can get in touch with about those neighbourhood queries, and will ensure that you get that increase in patrols in those peak areas for antisocial behaviour. Okay. Alongside that, giving them stronger powers on things like off-road bikes, which drive people up the wall and are really dangerous, and on stronger powers on things like street theft and shop theft as well.
Can I ask you something else that's in the news today on the front page of the Telegraph concerning the police? Their story is police put block on white recruits to boost diversity. This is apparently temporarily blocking applications from white British candidates in an attempt to boost diversity, according to the Telegraph. That's West Yorkshire Police. Is this acceptable? What do you know about what's been happening here?
So all police forces have to have fair recruitment arrangements in place. They have to make sure they're getting the best candidate for the job. So as I understand it, the arrangements in West Yorkshire have all been looked at by the Independent Inspectorate to make sure that they are properly fair recruitment processes, and that's exactly what they're doing. Lots of organisations do encourage more applications from different underrepresented groups, but the actual decisions that they make on recruitment have to make sure that they are getting the best person for the job. That's what all police forces need to do, because that's how we make sure we've got the best possible talent for policing our communities.
All right. Also on recruitment, there are concerns about vetting at the moment, aren't there? Obviously, you know, there's a lot of mistrust in the police because of the rogue people that we've seen, Wayne Couzens, David Carrick, for example, and there are concerns about the officers that are in our force that shouldn't be. We know that Mark Rowley, the head of the Met Police Force, wants powers to sack officers who fail vetting. He's been asking the government to have those greater powers. Will you give those powers to make sure that officers can be sacked who shouldn't be in the police force, who aren't safe to be there?
Yes, we're doing two things. We're making sure it is easier for police forces to be able to remove officers who fail vetting, who fail to meet those proper standards. It's right, that should be able to happen. And also, we're bringing in new national standards for vetting, because there's been a bit of a postcode lottery. I think that is unacceptable. We need high standards for vetting right across the country, because we've got to make sure we've got high standards in policing. Overwhelming majority of police officers are working incredibly hard. They do the most difficult job, and they run towards danger when the rest of us can run away. It's hugely important for them, as well as for the confidence of communities, that standards in policing are upheld and maintained at the highest level. We're bringing in new standards in policing alongside the additional neighbourhood police on the beat, because I think this is so important.
There's been upset this week about the situation with the grooming gangs inquiries, haven't there? Can you tell us what's happening? Because the government announced these 5 locally led inquiries back in January. Now this week we hear it's been shifted in favour of what's being described as a flexible approach. that involves more bespoke work like victims, panels. I mean, there are real concerns that this is being watered down. I'm going to play you now a piece of soundbite that we've got from one of the fathers of a grooming victim. It's Marlon West. Just listen to what he has to say on this subject.
If Yvette Cooper was with me now, one, I'd tell her how disgusted I feel and how let down. You know, for example, Scarlett, my daughter, has been through hell and back, and so have all the other survivors. And to dismiss them and throw them under the bus the way they have, it's appalling. Where do we go from now?
What's your reaction? Because, you know, we can hear there the pain from victims' families, the victims themselves, what they have been through, and they feel let down by this decision.
So what we're doing is increasing the action on these vile crimes, child sexual exploitation and abuse. And understandably, victims and survivors want stronger action. That's what we're doing. There has been a huge amount of misinformation this week. Sadly, party political misinformation. It is just wrong. We're not watering anything down. We're actually increasing and strengthening the action that we are taking. So we're supporting local inquiries. We've announced the first one will be Oldham, but there will be other local inquiries. We're setting out the framework. We always said we would also do more to support victims and survivors, and we're actually announcing additional therapeutic support will be provided for victims and survivors of awful child abuse and exploitation. These are the most terrible crimes of all. We're talking about rape, we're talking about coercion, we're talking about exploitation. We have to have support for victims and survivors. We have to have local inquiries where they are needed, but we also, crucially, have to have police investigations. The most important thing we are doing is increasing police investigations into these appalling, appalling crimes so that we get the perpetrators behind bars. That is the justice that victims and survivors need to see, and that is also the way to keep communities safe.
OK, and just before we let you go, I wanted to get your reaction. We've just been having a debate on the UK government reportedly developing a sort of murder prediction programme, a crime prediction programme using AI, which will look at people who've committed crimes and then predict what crimes they might then go on to commit. Is this the future of policing, where we'll see AI then predicting who's going to commit a crime, that we could have police officers knocking on people's doors in advance?
No, obviously not. You can't police people for crimes that they haven't committed. That's not a criminal justice system. What you can do, however, is use new technology, including AI, to identify where areas are that are facing the greatest increases and problems in crime. Also, there's work done using new technology to identify who the most dangerous offenders are, for example, around domestic abuse or violence against women and girls, and to identify, therefore, who the police should be prioritising in their investigations and in the action that they are taking to make sure that they can get prosecutions, that they can get protection orders in place to protect victims, and that they can get serious criminals behind bars.
OK. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
So we are joined by former Labour Shadow Cabinet Minister Jonathan Ashworth, former Conservative Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng.
Welcome back to both of you.
Just hearing my ear, actually, the stock market's up 5% this morning.
Well, because of the Trump,
there we are.
Well, he's rowed back, so...
Things are improving.
Yeah.
It is interesting, isn't it? That's obviously having an impact instantly.
Well, he's retreated, and as I said, let's see whether he comes back.
Still going to be an absolute roller coaster, though, isn't it?
There's still uncertainty.
It really is. And it's still going to hit us. There's still tariffs. There's still a trade war. You know, that is still the economy potentially in the doldrums. And that's going to cause us problems.
Well, and he did warn of more great days to come, didn't he? So we don't quite know what his definition of a great day is, as to what the ramifications will be for the rest of the world. So we will wait and see on that one. I've just been interviewing Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. She was talking about the policing, the policing guarantee that's going to be put in force. There's still this issue, isn't there, though, about police numbers, about funding, because obviously they're saying that they're putting more money into policing, and yet we're hearing from the senior police chiefs, it's not enough.
Yeah, but look, I mean, police numbers went down under the Conservatives. This Labour government's trying to bring them.
Hang on a second, they went up again under the Conservatives.
Yeah, but they went down a bit.
Went down,
then they went up.
Yeah, but I mean, look, everybody.
Per head they went down.
But everybody knows that in a local area that the police have been overstretched. So I think this is a really, really welcome step from the Labour government. I think it's exactly the sort of thing this Labour government should be focusing on. It will make a material difference to people's lives because the antisocial behaviour, I mean, Yvette Cooper was talking about those mini bikes that drive around estates, which drive people mad. If the police can crack down on this and are backed up with the resources to crack down on this, this will improve people's lives. It's a good thing.
So it's all sort of motherhood and apple pie, but as I've said, every government I can remember has said we'll have more bobbies on the beat. The issue that you raised was to do with funding. And Mark Rowley, who I know from the Met, he was also chief in Surrey, where I was an MP, he's saying that he doesn't have the resources to fulfil, his duty now. And I'm wondering to myself, where are they going to get the money from? And also, 2029 is a long way in the future.
And you've also got
a long time to wait.
And you've also got a spending review this summer. We know that spending review was very tight for the unprotected departments other than National Health Service. And the Home Office is one of those departments, like Justice, like local government, which is not protected. They're expecting cuts.
Yeah.
And that's even before the fiscal position is deteriorating.
So Ed's right.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, but look, you had Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, I think it was on Saturday or Sunday, saying that his big driving mission now is strength abroad, security at home. Security at home has to mean making our streets safer.
He has quite a lot of driving missions, Keir Starmer.
He does.
In fact, I would say he writes an article every day in which he announces a new driving mission.
And no one knows how it's funded. I mean, what you've said is exactly right. It's very easy, and I've done it, people in Cabinet have done it, to make a very shiny and wonderful announcement. But once you actually unpick the announcement and say, where is the money coming from?
Yvette Cooper said the money was there. She said there's 200 million.
But we also know that the head of the Met is saying that
there's not enough.
There's a black hole. So they can't both be right.
She was talking about this year, but actually it's the Parliament which matters. And at the moment, nobody knows what the budget's going to be next year.
But the heads of the police now, as you would expect, perhaps, but I trust them. I think they're right. And they're saying they don't have enough money.
Yeah, the trouble is all these things take time to filter down, don't they? It's sort of whatever they put in place now is not going to have an effect for some time, is it? That's the thing as well. And when we look at the Met Police one, the figures they quote is that they're going to have to lose 1,700 staff, including officers and PCSOs. That's a huge number to cut, isn't it?
Yeah, but you've got to start turning this around, and they've got to start somewhere. And I think the fact that they're focusing on this today is really important. I think, as I say, I think it's exactly the sort of thing a Labour government should be focusing on. Look, no one's going to pretend that after 14 years of this lot making a mess of it, they're going to be able to fix it.
You can't keep going on about that.
I think we've had that.
We can't. Don't worry, we'll be going on about that for a long time.
How many years did George Osborne go on about the last Labour government? How many was it? 1 year? Was it 2 years?
The news
was it 5 years?
Much faster.
14 years on, I tell you, he's still going on about it day after day after day.
Do you think that there's... What do we make of the fact that Keir Starmer's going to be there front and centre, isn't he, of this policing announcement today? He was there yesterday, wasn't he, talking about the amusement park being on... He seems to be very present when it comes to claiming lots of the strategies that are going on. What's behind
he's the Prime Minister, and I think people expect that from the Prime Minister.
Is that how it works, Kwasi? I mean, normally wouldn't it be Yvette Cooper front and centre announcing
So generally, the rule, when it's nice, shiny announcements, the PM likes to cover himself or herself with glory and credit. And then when things go wrong, they blame other people. That's generally what happens in government.
Look, yesterday he secured a theme park. And I wondered to myself, do I want our Prime Minister securing a theme park, or do we want him actually sorting out the global economy and peace in Ukraine?
I think his focus...
I might have left sorting out the theme park to the Chancellor or the Business Secretary or somebody else.
No, but they don't. They always claim... I mean...
He's personally
secured investment, though. It's investment.
He's personally secured a theme park.
Job.
But then when if anything goes wrong with the theme park, he will be the last person associated, and he'll say it was never his idea. If anything goes wrong with that.
Do you remember casinos?
Yeah.
One Prime Minister was working night and day to get them. The next Prime Minister said, nothing to do with me.
That's right.
Tony Blair?
I do. Well, yes.
I remember
the Super Casino at Manchester. Was it Manchester, I think it was?
I think so, my gosh. Yeah. All in the park.
If only we could predict these things. Talking of predictions, because something else we were talking about, which I think, is kind of it's one of those things that's very futuristic, the AI prediction of crime. Yes. So will we be able to use this technology to predict who will carry out crimes in the future? How will this work? All the considerations that go into this.
I just wonder sometimes now if we put this label AI on everything, which is sometimes they're just mathematical probability tools which have been used in public services forever. I suspect that's really what it is. It looks at the sorts of areas which generally have higher crime rates and then predicts that they're going to continue to have higher crime rates, so you need to put more resource there. But we just label it AI these days.
Yeah.
It's just basically a model that's always used.
I think Jonathan's right. I think we've always tried to use technology to anticipate, where there is a need for spending. And so AI, it sounds like crazy robots and scary, but all it is a predictive tool so that you can allocate resources more effectively.
And consistent with protecting civil liberties, if it helps us catch more criminals or prevent more crime.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never had a problem with this, and I get the sort of civil liberties arguments, but if you're actually reducing crime and stopping people from getting killed, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in my old Leicester constituency. We knew the areas where there were problems. Of course I want more resource there. Of course I want more police there. I don't necessarily need AI to tell us that, but, if you can get it...
probably knew who the criminals were and...
Often the case.
Absolutely.
Often the case.
Thank you both very much for that.